I'm here with Nichole from TopiTopi Therapy. I'm so excited for this conversation with her. Nichole, can you tell us kind of like how you got into bilingual speech therapy and everything you do?
Yeah, of course. So how did I get into bilingual speech therapy? I grew up bilingual. I grew up between worlds. I was born in the States, and when I was 7, we moved to Puerto Rico. So I learned really early on that language and knowing more than one language is a super important life skill,
Yeah.
and I from a very early age just loved languages and learning, and I love to talk. So I think it was like an easy decision when it got to that point where I first found out that this was a thing I could do, that this was a profession. I
Yeah.
was like, oh yeah, that's it. That's what I want.
Mm,
So yeah, I went to school in Puerto Rico. I did my bachelor's and master's in Puerto Rico. And then in 2017, I moved to the Chicago area,
okay.
and I've been here ever since, working with school districts, specifically with the Hispanic community. And yeah, I love what I do. I love
That's
it.
awesome. And you just released a book.
I
Can you
did. I
tell us
did.
more
So
about that?
I just self-published Vocabulario
Awesome.
Boricua, which is a bilingual Puerto Rican Spanish picture book. So
So cool.
I created that just out of necessity, because I want my children. I'm raising them bilingual, but in our area we don't have access to many Puerto Ricans, like just in our community. So my kids were learning more Mexican Spanish, which
Mm,
is fine. I want them to learn
yeah.
that dialect, but also I want them to learn my dialect, the
Yeah.
Puerto Rican dialect, and be able to talk to their grandparents. And when we go to Puerto Rico, to be able to communicate easily. So I tried finding resources and I just couldn't find any. So I created them on my own. I created them myself, and it's been amazing because so many other families were in the same boat,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they've loved it.
It's really cool. It's so special. I mean, that's how I found your stuff on Instagram. Like, I just found you so resourceful and you share from such a like place of like this is like my culture, my heritage, but I am like all for like just raising your children to know their culture, know their dialect, know where they're from. It's really a special thing to gift your kids. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of how we started conversating via email, is I sent you a question about my son who's almost 2, and at the time he didn't have a lot of words yet under his belt, and I was like I know his speech would be a little delayed, but then he had a language explosion, and now on the other side of that he is kind of mixing his English and Spanish. It is like Spanglish at its finest. So a couple weeks ago he was saying akir, like he was mixing aki and here, and I was like, this is so funny. But I think there's like this myth that like bilingualism causes confusion, and situations like that I think people are like, oh, like, what are you doing, like he's gonna be confused. Can you break down, you know you mentioned things like code switching and kids kind of going in between both languages. What is happening in their brain, and how would you debunk the myth that is actually not confusion happening?
Yes, that is a great question. I'm glad you mentioned that. That is a very typical, very normal part of bilingual language development. And I think that that thought process of people thinking that it's confusion comes from a very closed monolingual mindset, where there isn't that understanding of what really is happening. And what's happening, like with Akir, he's mixing like the beginning of the word in Spanish because he knows both. Like
Right.
what we know when they mix is that they know both words. So like they're not confused. Like they have aquí, they have here. He knows the concept of what he wants to communicate,
Right. Right.
but he's in that process of like, I want to communicate and I'm not sure which one to pick. So I mean, he did it in the correct order. Like it was the beginning of one word and the end of the
Yeah.
other, and he just mixed it. Um, I have another example, and that's called translanguaging, is what it's
Okay.
called. So I have another example with my 4-year-old when he was 3. he said chooping. My husband was vacuuming, and he wanted to say like, oh look, the vacuum sucking up the rice, and he just didn't have the vocabulary word for like sucking, like that verb, but he had it in Spanish, which was chupar. So he was like, okay, I only speak English to dad. Okay, so chupar plus ing for the verb, because I know that's English. Chooping, it's chooping the rice. So like what really is happening is they're showing that they have a really good grasp of the rules, the grammatical, morphological rules of each language. And so they're just using them together. And I think that's beautiful. And it really shows that they are learning both languages in the correct way. And they're just being resourceful, which is like amazing.
It is amazing. And so it's literally so cool to watch. Watching all the words that he picks up on, I'm like, this is so crazy that you can just like you're such a little human and you can just navigate between two languages.
Yes, and that goes to show, like, for all the people who are like, oh, we should stick to one language while, in the early years because they're going to get confused. No, like, they are fully capable of learning two or more languages at the same time. You might see kind of those code switching moments where they don't have the vocabulary word in one language yet, and they'll switch for the other one, but they're being effective communicators, which is what we want. And as the years go by and they have more exposure, they'll learn the vocabulary words that are missing in the other language, but it doesn't mean they're confused.
Sure. Is there like an age where you feel like it like levels out, or like, they start to really truly separate the two languages?
So usually by age between 2 and 3, they already know, like receptively, they already know that there are two codes.
Okay.
At what age, like that's it depends on each child and like what their levels of exposure are. Because sometimes when they start school, they might be Spanish dominant and have like more of a grasp in Spanish. And then they start kindergarten and it's an English only classroom. Then sometimes I'll see a shift with my own students where they start acquiring English and preferring English and they lose some of the Spanish. So it's very like dependent on each particular situation, the family situation, if they're doing one parent, one language, or if they're doing all minority language. So yeah, it depends.
Yeah, that makes sense. With one parent, one language, we're doing one parent, one language. It sounds like that's what you do at your house too. Mm-hmm. Is there like, as they develop, so my son is almost 2, is there anything I should focus on with development, or should I just keep, doing what I'm doing, reading to him in Spanish, making sure he's just as immersed as possible in Spanish?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're doing a great job so far. Like I really say I can't say it enough to really, really focus on Spanish as much as possible at the home, especially when we're doing one parent, one language. We know that like that weight of being the input in Spanish is on our shoulders. And I feel it. Like I feel it every single day, where it's like this uphill battle, I feel like, because English is everywhere, even in the home, because my husband speaks English. So it truly is like just trying, like screen time. If we do screen time, trying Spanish. To be in Spanish, like the books are in Spanish. Even if we have English books, I'll translate them as I go, to keep the Spanish. Because it truly, it's, some people will say like, oh, they'll just pick it up, but that's not true. Like we have to be really, really intentional about the Spanish input. So really just being consistent and not, for me, it's like not switching to English, like ever. And my in-laws don't speak Spanish. So like they understand that even if they're here in our home, I will be speaking Spanish to my kids, and they're okay with that. Or if we have play dates where the other family, like one of the other families doesn't speak Spanish, like I just tell them ahead of time, like I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just like, I speak Spanish with my kids. Like this is part of our like, parenting plan. Like just, I hope you're okay with that. Sure. And they're okay with that. If they're not, then we can't have any more plans. But I just have to be really, really intentional about the Spanish, because it becomes harder as they grow older.
Yeah, that's what I've learned. It does seem like it becomes more of a challenge to do it when kids
Mm-hmm.
are older.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with this is kind of like related to one parent, one language. Like my husband the other day was saying how sometimes he's like, I feel like I'm like missing out. He's like so supportive of me only speaking Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like there are moments like, okay, this is a perfect example. Like a week ago, I was telling my son to go to the bathroom and wash his hands. So my son is
Mm-hmm.
going to the bathroom door and he's trying to open the bathroom door. And my husband's like, no, 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 we're closing the bathroom door. And I was like, okay. Like in those moments, as far as bilingual parenting is concerned, like how much of that do you like translate for the partner? Like I feel like we're still trying to find our rhythms, because it was like now we're like not on the same page and that's even more concerning. But how do we find a rhythm to that if you can?
Yeah, honestly, I'm still trying to figure that
Okay.
out too, because we've had that same, like, very similar situations where my
Yeah.
husband's like, no, and we're like, no, I told him to do this, that, and it's hard because again, the weight is on
Yeah.
our shoulders, and it's our job to then be the translators for our partners to avoid misunderstandings,
Right.
like you just said. So we're still trying to find a rhythm. My husband, so we have an almost 5 year old and a 2 year old, and he's learned a lot of Spanish throughout these years since
It's
our oldest
awesome.
was born. And just through just exposure, like just
Sure.
listening to me speaking Spanish to the kids. So he's learned a lot. So I feel like those experiences, like those situations, have lessened because now he knows baño, manos,
Yeah.
he's like, okay, and he can pick up like, okay, you said this or that.
Right.
So it's gotten better. But if it's something important in the moment, I will translate like, hey, I just told him that he has to do blah, blah, blah. And
Okay.
I like front load, like this is the expectation. So he won't like jump in and say, don't do that. But yeah, we're still trying to find a rhythm. It's gotten easier,
Yeah.
but we're still also figuring it out.
Yeah. That's super helpful. I will keep that in mind to kind of just like communicate on the front end.
Yeah, yeah, and it's hard, like, because if you're in the moment, we know what it's like with kids. It's like you got to be quick.
You gotta be quick and
So
clear.
yes, yeah. So it's hard. It's an extra step for us to,
Yes.
kind of translate for the partner, but that's what we've been doing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Looking at my other questions. Is there like one, okay, this is a great question. Is there one thing you wish that every bilingual parent knew before even starting, and then something that you wish they knew when they were like 5 years into the game?
Hmm. Well, given my interactions with so many bilingual families, I would say number one thing they should know is that they're not doing anything wrong,
Mm,
that raising them bilingual will not cause delays. Because I get this question all the time. So I would say number one is you won't cause any delays by raising your kids bilingual. Um, it's still to this day, like it's 2026, and still like there are professionals who will say that, who will
yeah.
perpetuate that myth that they
Oof.
will, like, it'll cause delays or it'll cause problems. Even if you have a child who does have a speech delay, you can still raise them bilingual. Like
Hmm.
that isn't
It's great.
or if they have a disability, like that is not an exclusionary factor to like, oh well, now you have to pick a language, because I've seen that too,
Yeah.
where there's a diagnosis and the pediatrician will say like, oh well, to make things easier, then now you have to pick English, you have to switch to English. So,
Sheesh.
which is like completely wrong.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that like you won't cause any delays
Okay.
by picking this route, this journey
Yeah.
with your children. um and 5 years in, I would say it's hard, it is extremely difficult,
Yeah.
but it is worth it.
Yeah.
I will say that, seeing my son when we either go to Puerto Rico to visit my parents, or when they come visit, watching him speak in Spanish, in like
Mm.
full fluent Spanish with and
So
I get
cool.
goosebumps just talking
I
about
could
it.
cry.
Yes,
So
seeing him.
special.
So, Ita, voy a hacer esto, vamos a jugar, vamos al parque. Blah, 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 blah.
Mm.
And seeing him completely switch to Spanish with my parents, I'm like, in those moments, I'm like, yes, this is why I'm doing this. It's so hard. It is
Yeah.
difficult. And I won't lie. Like, there have been moments where I'm like, where I want to give up.
Yeah.
There are moments, and I am a bilingual speech pathologist. Like, I know how good this is for them. And there are moments as a mom, as a human, that I'm like, man, this is really hard. Like, what if I were to just to like give up and but no.
Default
And I'm like, I'll regroup. This is hard, but this is why we're doing it. And in those moments, I'm like, yes, this is why we're doing this.
So
like
good.
This is priceless.
Yes.
So yeah, so it is hard, but it is worth it 100%.
Yeah, that's so encouraging. I know I keep telling myself that because I'm like, I was raised as a Sisabo kid. Like I knew Espanol because my abuela only spoke Spanish to me, but she passed when I was like 13. So after that, I didn't really need, like, I talked to my parents in English. Like I didn't need to speak Spanish, but it was in my adulthood that I was like, no, I need to know Spanish. And then once I knew I was pregnant, I was like, I need to like give this beautiful language and culture to my children. Like I have to. Like it felt like a mission for me. And so sometimes I like struggle with person my own like Spanish journey and making sure I'm saying things the right way. And my mom, um, she is with my son 4 days a week, and she only speaks to him in Spanish. So it's like we've got great support. Like our families are on board, and it's such a wonderful journey that I know, like to your point, when he's 25, 30, he's going to look back and be like, thank you so much. Like, I really believe that. Like, I just think of the opportunity for him, like when he travels, when he's looking for a job, like all of these different things that he'll be able to experience because he's bilingual. It's just really amazing.
Yeah, and kudos to you as an adult. Like, because it is way easier to learn a second language as a child.
Yeah.
We know that, but as an adult, you had that mission, like that desire to learn and then pass it on to your child.
Yeah.
Like that's huge. That's amazing. And yeah, like you said, like there's so many more opportunities. You're opening doors for them,
right.
By raising them bilingual, and also like that cultural part for them to be, grow up being, just honoring their culture and being proud of their heritage. Like that's super important too.
It is so special, especially Boricuas, just full of pride for the island. Yeah. And it's a special thing for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything else that you would share or that you would want people to hear from you or know, like from your experience professionally as a mom, as a wife, like anything come to your mind?
My other, I guess, like just tip would be, I mentioned consistency, and if you're doing one parent, one language, like stick to that language. But I will say that throughout these past 5 years of bilingual parenting, we have started being a little bit more flexible.
Okay.
But on the English side, so I will still stick to Spanish, like 100%. But my husband, since he started learning more Spanish, now he's speaking Spanish with my daughter. Okay. Like the few phrases that he knows.
Yeah.
Like I'll hear him be like, aww. Oh, ¿cuál camisa quieres? Esta camisa quieres rosa? ¿Quieres azul? And I'm like hearing him like speaking Spanish, and I'm like, oh, yes. And part of me, because we've been so rigid with like, no, but you're doing English, you're teaching her English. And I'm like, you know what? It's extra exposure to Spanish.
Yes.
That's fine. She'll learn English later. So we've become a little bit more flexible where I'm like, yeah, I'm okay with this.
That's so cool.
So and at the end of the day, like some people ask like, oh, what's the best method? Yeah. That's something that like I'll hear a lot. What's the best method to raise bilingual kids? And my answer is whatever works and is sustainable for your family. Because I could say like in my mind, so I was raised minority language at home when like those first 7 years that we were in the States. So my parents spoke only Spanish to me. I learned English when I started going to school. So in my mind, okay, if you can do that, definitely do that. I would say like that way they have like a really, really solid foundation in the
Yeah.
first language. But that has to work, like that can only work if both parents speak that language.
Right.
So, that you're like, okay, that wasn't an option for me, for our family. So it's like, okay, one parent, one language is what works for us. So whatever is sustainable for your family is the best method.
Yeah.
Because like if it's an extra, una carga más, like if it's an extra like weight on your shoulders and you're like, oh my God, this is so hard, this is making my life, I'm miserable, because then that's not the method for you.
Yeah.
You can relax your expectations and find what the flow, like find what works for your family.
That's good. That is really helpful, because I do think I know some people that are on the fence about it that have like littles, and I'm so pro, do it. And even this conversation with you, like I'm so excited to share this, and just I've been sharing your page with people because I'm like, people need to just be encouraged to do this more. It is more rewarding than it is challenging for both parent and child. I believe that.
Absolutely. And there are lots of just moments where, like you said, like it's more rewarding. Like when the lows are low, just like parenting, like the lows are lowest and the highs are really high.
It's true.
But you have those moments where, like, my husband will ask my son, like, oh, how do you say XYZ in Spanish? And my son's like, oh, se dice así. And he's like, okay. And he'll practice then with our daughter, and like moments like that where they're playing around with languages, like we're making it fun, where it's not like this, like, you have to speak Spanish. And that's another tip. Like if, when you have a child who's a little bit older and maybe resistant to Spanish, like not going into the dímelo en español, like, because you will get pushback.
Sure.
You will get pushback.
What do you do though? How do
you model? So I recommend just modeling, because sometimes it's lack of vocabulary, where they're just like, they're saying in English because it comes quicker. So instead of like, tell me in Spanish, just like, and my son will do it. Like he'll say something in English and I'll just reply, I'll repeat what he said, but in Spanish.
Okay.
Oh, que quieres ir a whatever, a la tienda? Oh, okay, ¿quieres ir a la tienda? And then he'll be like, oh, sí, quiero ir a la tienda, mamá. And so he'll repeat it in Spanish. So it's very relaxed. It's not like, or I'll say, ¿qué? He'll say something in English and I'm like, ¿qué? And he'll go, oh, and he'll switch to Spanish and he'll just say it in Spanish. If he doesn't, then I'll model it in Spanish and he'll get like, oh, right. Okay. I said it in English. I'm going to switch.
Yeah.
So kind of not forcing it, because I mean, every human, like if someone tries to force you to do something, you are going to recoil. You're going to be like, no, I'm not going to do this. Right. And then you get into that dynamic of like fighting them to speak Spanish, and you don't want to get into that.
Right. Man, that's so good. That's so helpful. Thank God for people like you. Yes. Thank you so much for your time today.